My parents called me a disgrace for dropping out of college to be a musician. Now they want VIP passes to my tour. But I had a special section just for them. Growing up in my house meant you followed the rules. Not just the kind that keep you from getting grounded. No, I'm talking about life rules. You graduate with honors. You get into a good college, ideally one that looks expensive on a bumper sticker. You get a real job, and you never, ever question the path laid out for you. I tried to walk that path. I really did. I was halfway through my sophomore year at a well-respected university majoring in economics, which I didn't care about, when I dropped out. I didn't fail out. I didn't burn out. I dropped out on purpose. The reason? Music. Specifically, my music. I'd been producing beats and writing lyrics in secret since I was 16, borrowing my cousin's laptop and recording late at night in our basement when I was supposed to be sleeping. It wasn't just a hobby. It was how I breathed. And eventually, I got good. Really good. But my parents? They didn't get it. When I told them I was leaving college, my dad didn't speak for a full minute. Then he just muttered, "You're throwing your life away." My mom cried. She said I was ruining their reputation and that I was being ungrateful for everything they sacrificed. She kept throwing out phrases like disgrace to the family, wasting your potential, and you're not even that talented. What hurt more than the words was that they genuinely believed they were doing the right thing, that their path was the only way to succeed, that anything else, even if I was passionate about it, was just delusion. I moved out the next week. My savings weren't much. I'd been working part-time on campus and tutoring high school kids for extra money. But between that and selling some old equipment I had, I scraped together enough for 3 months of rent in a shoebox apartment in a sketchy part of the city. It was cramped. It was cold. But it was mine. And more importantly, I could make music without apologizing for it. I got to work. Not just making music, but building everything around it. I uploaded songs to SoundCloud, ran social media pages, cold emailed small venues begging for open mic slots. I worked at a bar to pay rent and spent every spare second learning how to mix, master, promote, brand, and hustle. There were weeks when nothing happened. No likes. No followers. I started to think my parents might have been right. But every time I looked at my hands, stained from late-night dishwashing and keyboard calluses, I remembered I didn't drop out for nothing. One night, I posted a freestyle I'd written about working 3 jobs just to chase a dream. I didn't expect much, but somehow it hit. Like, really hit. Within 48 hours, it got 10,000 plays. Then 50,000. Then a local radio station picked it up. I started getting DMs from other artists asking to collaborate. A small indie label reached out, but I didn't sign. I kept building. I turned that momentum into an EP, then a second one. I reinvested every dime into better equipment, better production, and better strategy. I wasn't just making music. I was making a movement. One rooted in showing people they weren't alone in being told they weren't good enough. By year 3, I had over 1 million streams, my own management team, and a tiny but fiercely loyal fan base. You know who still hadn't called? My parents. Not once. I'd get updates from my sister, who stayed in contact. She told me my mom still told people I was taking a break from college. My dad apparently said I was traveling, trying to figure things out. They never even mentioned the music. It stung, but it didn't stop me. Then came the turning point. A viral TikTok challenge using one of my tracks exploded. My Spotify went from 40,000 monthly listeners to over 500,000 in a month. Brands wanted sponsorships. Labels came back. Only this time I was setting the terms. And I sold out my first headline show in under 30 minutes. That's when the calls started coming. It was subtle at first. My mom texted me a video of a news segment where they used one of my songs in the background. She just wrote, "This sounded familiar," smiley face. Then my dad emailed me a weirdly formal, "Congrats on your success. Glad you finally found your path." No apology. No acknowledgement of what they said to me. Just a weird, passive, "We support you now that you made it." And then they asked for something. 2 VIP passes to my first major tour stop in our hometown. Said they wanted to be there for my big moment. I smiled when I read it. Not because I was happy, but because the real show was just getting started. Great. Here's part 2 of the story, with emotional depth, realism, and at least 900 words. Part 2. The rehearsal for forgiveness. The thing about time is that it doesn't just heal, it hardens. Or at least it did for me. I'd spent so long carrying the silence of my parents that by the time they finally decided I was worthy of recognition, I wasn't sure there was anything left to offer them. When that text came in asking for VIP passes, I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I used to be. But there was something cold about it. Detached. They didn't want to be there for me. They wanted to be there for the version of me that the world now applauded. They wanted the spotlight without having to walk through the shadows it took to get there. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I called my tour manager, Jess. Can we set up a VIP section with some custom seats? She laughed. You want thrones or something? Worse, I said. I want chairs. Real regular folding chairs. With their names taped to the back. I'll cover the cost. Jess paused. Is this like petty or poetic? Maybe both, I replied. Just make sure they're seated front and center, but also separate from everyone else. I wanted to feel deliberate. Because it was. That entire week leading up to the show, I went through every emotion in the book. Part of me wanted to cancel their tickets. Another part of me wanted to finally sit them down, scream, cry, demand answers for why they treated me like a failure. But the most honest part of me, I just wanted them to feel what I felt. Invisible. Disregarded. Only acknowledged when it served someone else. Flashback a few years. I was 18 and fresh out of high school. I'd won a local talent competition, just a weekend thing, not even televised. But I was over the moon. I brought the certificate home, hoping desperately that this would be the thing that made them see me. My dad didn't even look up from his laptop. My mom said, "That's nice, but don't let it distract you from what's important." That certificate stayed folded in the bottom drawer of my desk until I moved out. That memory stuck with me like a scar. The night of the show arrived. It was surreal, my first arena-level gig in my hometown. Thousands of people in the crowd. Lights everywhere. My name on the marquee in 12-foot neon. There was a weird beauty in returning as someone people wanted to pay to see. The same city that once barely noticed me now couldn't get enough. Backstage, I could hear the crowd building. The energy was electric. And then I got the message from security. Your parents have arrived. Show them to their seats. I said. Section F, row 1. Just as planned. That section was unlike the others. No one else sat there. It was just 2 metal folding chairs, each with a laminated card taped to the back, reserved for those who never believed. I wasn't trying to humiliate them. Okay, maybe a little. But more than that, I wanted them to understand that belief costs nothing, but withholding it costs everything. I didn't go greet them. I didn't send backstage passes. I went on stage. The lights dimmed. The roar of the crowd echoed through my chest. And as I stepped into the spotlight, the first thing I did was pause and scan the audience. Right in the middle, Section F, I saw them. My mom in her pearls. My dad stiff, unsure whether to look proud or ashamed. I opened the show with a monologue, something I hadn't done before, but this show felt personal. When I started making music, I didn't do it to prove anyone wrong. I said into the mic, I did it to survive. Because when the world is loud and cruel and cold, music lets you whisper back. I could hear people cheering, but I wasn't done. Some people in my life told me I was wasting my potential, that I was a disappointment, that I was a disgrace. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. But the thing about disgrace is, you can only feel it when you care what they think. I let that hang for a beat, then dove into the first track, one of the oldest ones I'd ever written. A song I made in that freezing shoebox apartment. It was raw, unpolished, but it still hit harder than anything that came after. Throughout the night, I glanced at them a few times. My dad clapped politely. My mom tried to smile. But mostly, they looked small. Not embarrassed. Not regretful. Just unmoored. Like the distance between who I had become and who they once tried to shape had finally sunk in. After the encore, I walked off stage, heart racing, lungs burning. And I didn't go out to see them. I stayed with my crew. We drank cheap champagne and laughed until we cried. It wasn't until the next morning that I got a message from my dad. We didn't know how to support you back then. We thought we were doing the right thing. Your show was something else. Proud of you. I stared at the screen. There was no apology. But there was something else, recognition. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. After my dad's text, I sat with my phone for a long time. Not scrolling. Not replying. Just holding it in my hand like it might somehow get heavier or warmer or crack open and explain itself. We didn't know how to support you. That line clung to me like cold air. I read it again and again until the words didn't feel like words anymore. Just syllables of something that came too late and not deep enough. See, people always talk about how much it hurts to be told you're a failure. But no one really tells you how confusing it is to get half an apology. That in-between space where someone kinda admits they were wrong, but doesn't say sorry. When they acknowledge what happened, but not how it felt. I didn't reply. Not right away. That weekend, I flew out for the next city on tour. Bigger venue, bigger crowd. But something about being on that stage after the hometown show felt different. Like the part of me that used to perform to prove something had finally exhaled. I was still hungry, but no longer starving. Backstage, just handed me an envelope. Mail for you, she said. Weirdly formal. Looks like it was sent to the label and forwarded. I opened it and immediately recognized the handwriting. My mom's. Inside was a card with glittery cursive that said, "We're so proud of you." There was no note. Just that. The card felt like it belonged to someone else's life. Not the same life where my mom once told me that if I dropped out, I'd end up with nothing but dreams and debt. Not the same woman who refused to tell her friends I made music because she was still praying I'd return to school. And yet, she'd sent it. I still didn't reply. I was tired of doing emotional math for them, of trying to figure out what part of them meant what, how much was guilt and how much was image management. A few weeks later, my manager called. "So, funny thing," she said with a smirk in her voice. "Your parents reached out. They want to attend the final show of the tour. VIP again." I almost laughed. "This time," I said, "sure. But tell them there's a special section for them again." "You want the folding chairs again?" Jess asked. I shook my head. "No. This time, make it nice. Like, really nice. Lounge chairs, a little velvet rope, soft lighting, whole thing. But put it off to the side of the stage. Just enough so the spotlight never hits them." "Damn," she muttered. "Symbolic. I like it." The final show of the tour was in LA, a huge venue, sold out, cameras everywhere. It was the kind of night that felt like a turning point, the kind where you know your life splits into before and after. I walked out and the crowd's roar shook the ground beneath me. Every time I experience that, it still surprises me. That people would pay to hear the very voice that once made my mom wince when I rapped in the garage. Halfway through the set, I paused and looked toward the VIP section. My parents were there. My dad was in a suit. My mom looked like she'd spent hours getting ready. They were clapping, standing up, smiling. But they were still in the shadows. I started a song I hadn't planned to perform. One I wrote back in that basement, when I was 17. It was called No Apologies. It was raw, rough, real. About growing up unheard. About sitting at family dinners where the only silence louder than my own voice was theirs. I rapped the verses like my lungs were made of memory. The crowd went wild, but I wasn't performing for them. I glanced toward my parents again. This time, my mom wasn't smiling. She was just watching. Not upset, not clapping, just watching. After the show, I headed backstage, towel over my shoulders, sweat pouring down my spine. That's when Jess caught up with me. "They're here," she said quietly. I turned. My parents were standing near the exit curtain, clearly unsure if they were allowed back. I could have ignored them, could have walked away, but something in me said not to. I walked over slowly. "Hey," I said. My mom stepped forward. "You were amazing," she said. Her voice cracked. "Really?" My dad nodded. We're proud of you. Truly." I let the words hang. Then I said, "Thanks." Another pause. My mom's eyes welled up. I didn't understand back then. I didn't try to understand. And that's on me. That hit different. "Still," I asked, "why now?" She looked down. "Because it's harder to lie to yourself when the world is clapping for the truth you ignored." My throat tightened. "I'm not mad," I said. "Not anymore. But it's going to take time to feel normal." "We get that," my dad said. I nodded, then added, "You said I was a disgrace. I needed you to believe in me. You didn't." "I know," he replied. "I know. And I regret that every day. It wasn't a full fix. Nothing ever is. But it was real. We didn't hug, but we stood there, quiet, together, for the first time in years." A few days after the final show, I flew home. Not to the apartment I had when I was broke and sleeping on a futon, but to the loft I now owned. A place with soundproof walls, a home studio, and blackout blinds I rarely used because I liked waking up to the skyline. It was strange how success didn't feel the way I thought it would. There was no grand arrival, no orchestra playing, just space, quiet, a stillness I hadn't had in years. I sat on my balcony with a coffee, scrolling through photos fans had tagged me in from the show. People holding up signs with lyrics from my songs. Couples dancing in the crowd. Someone even had a tattoo of a line from one of my oldest tracks. You called it noise. I called it survival. I put my phone down. That one always hit. Because that's what music had always been to me. Not a rebellion. Not even ambition. Just the thing that kept me going when I had no one else cheering me on. Later that week, just called. You got a few press requests. Some local radio stations. One of them's doing a hometown hero spotlight. I laughed. A little ironic, don't you think? She snorted. You want me to decline? I thought about it. No, I said. Let's do it. 1. The local one. The interview was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Small independent station, just 2 mics and a dusty couch in a studio that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and ambition. The host, Marcus, greeted me with that warm, familiar nod locals always give, like they saw you grow up and can't quite believe you made it. You nervous? He asked, setting up the mics. Not really, I said. Just curious what you're gonna ask. He grinned. Oh, don't worry. We'll keep it chill. But there's one thing we have to talk about. I raised an eyebrow. He tapped his clipboard. That show last week. Your parents were there, yeah? I froze for a second, then nodded. Yeah, they came. How was that? He asked, his tone softer now. I took a deep breath. It was complicated. He didn't interrupt. Just let the silence hang until I kept going. For a long time, I chased this idea that if I made it big enough, loud enough, they'd have to listen. That maybe they'd see me differently if the world saw me first. Marcus nodded. Did they? I paused. I think they saw me, but not all the way. Not for who I was back then. More for who I am now, the version with clout, with sold-out shows, with a brand. He leaned back. That ever feel like not enough? I looked at him. Every day. That moment aired live. And to my surprise, it blew up. Not because of some juicy scandal, but because of how many people related to it. Messages poured in. DMs from people saying their parents called them disappointments. People who dropped out of college and were still proving themselves years later. People who never got the apology they deserved. It felt good. And it hurt. That Sunday, I got another message from my mom this time. Not a card. Not a text. A voicemail. Her voice cracked the second she started talking. I heard your interview. And I don't expect you to forgive me quickly. I just want you to know, I was wrong. About school. About you. About everything. I said awful things because I was scared. I thought the world was cruel and you'd get chewed up. I didn't realize I was being cruel first. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I sat on the couch and listened to it 3 times. It was the first time she said it. Sorry. And even though it didn't erase the past, it loosened something in me that had been clenched for years. I called her back. The phone rang once, twice. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Hello. Hi, Mom, I said. She gasped, like she didn't expect me to respond. We talked for 23 minutes. No yelling. No blame. Just quiet honesty, broken in places, but real. She told me about how she'd grown up poor and terrified of uncertainty. How college felt like safety to her. How she didn't know how to raise a kid chasing music because it didn't fit in the world she built around structure and degrees. I listened. I told her about the nights I slept on studio floors. About the time I almost quit. About how every time she called me a disgrace, it echoed in my head for weeks. We didn't fix everything, but we took a step. A few weeks later, I got an idea. I asked Jess to help me plan a small, invite-only show. No press. No merch. No frills. Just a stripped-down acoustic set in a local art gallery. 50 chairs. 1 mic. 1 guitar. I invited my parents. They came. I introduced them before the show. No sarcasm. No performative call-out. Just, these are my parents. It's taken us a while to get here. But we're here. My mom cried. My dad stood still, hands folded, eyes red. I performed 1 new song. Never released. Never even shared with my manager. It was called Almost Home. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the long road back from being called a disappointment and learning how to write your own name on the door when the world never expected you to get inside. The next leg of the tour was overseas. Paris, Berlin, Tokyo, Sydney. Places I'd dreamed about when I was lying on a lumpy couch in a friend's basement studio, scribbling lyrics in the margins of overdue bills. Back then, I thought success meant Grammys and gold chains. Now I knew it meant control over your time, your art, your peace, and sometimes your guest list. 6 months after the hometown concert, my team started organizing the biggest show I'd ever done. A full arena stadium back in New York. My first true headliner on a global scale. And because the industry is wild like that, it was being billed as a homecoming. Even though I'd left that place behind emotionally long ago, still, there was something poetic about it. I was sitting with Jess during a late-night planning session, going over the logistics for seating, when she asked, "You want to reserve spots for the family again?" I looked up from the diagram on her tablet. They asked. She raised an eyebrow. They haven't yet, but they will. Trust me. I sat back in my chair. Give them a section. Something they'll never forget. She grinned. You thinking folding chairs again? Velvet rope like last time. I shook my head. Something smarter. I paused for a second. Give them a perfect view of the stage. Isolated, but plush. A little too far from the crowd to blend in, but close enough to see every second of the show. Let them feel special and alone with it. Jess chuckled. I love when you get poetic with the petty. It's not petty, I said. It's placement. A mirror, if they're paying attention. She nodded. Noted. The night of the New York show, I paced backstage. The pre-show jitters never left, no matter how many times I performed. But this time, they weren't fear. They were clarity. Like I knew exactly what I was about to say without saying a word. Before I went out, I looked through the side curtain. There they were. My parents. They were sitting in what we'd labeled family view on the seating chart. A small, luxurious section set apart from the VIP lounge, with a crystal-clear angle of the stage, but no fans nearby to celebrate with, no crowd to disappear into. Just them. 2 seats. A table. A program. And silence. When I stepped out, the crowd exploded. Phones lit up like stars. People screamed my name. And the bass from the opening track thumped in my chest like a second heartbeat. I didn't acknowledge my parents for the first half of the show. I didn't even glance their way. But halfway through, I slowed things down. I pulled up a stool, grabbed an acoustic guitar, and sat center stage. This next one's for anyone who's ever been called a failure by people they love. I said into the mic, for anyone who was told their dreams were dumb, their passion was useless, or that they'd come crawling back. The crowd cheered. I took a breath and looked, for the first time that night, in the direction of my parents' seats. They were watching me. This song was new, unreleased. I wrote it after my mom's voicemail. It was called Invitation Lost. I sang. You said I was a shadow chasing wind slash, but I made the wind my sound slash built a home out of silence slash now you knock. But I ain't around. It wasn't angry. It was truthful. When I finished, the stadium was dead quiet for a beat. Then the crowd erupted. But I didn't smile. I let the silence before the applause linger just long enough for them. The rest of the night, I didn't need to prove anything. I just performed. After the encore, when the crowd filed out and the lights dimmed, I walked backstage, wiped the sweat off my face, and sipped from a water bottle as Jess handed me her phone. Thought you'd want to see this, she said. It was a photo from the stadium feed. My parents sitting in their private section, surrounded by empty velvet chairs. My mom was clapping softly. My dad had his head down, elbows on knees, hands clasped. I stared at it. You okay? Jess asked. I nodded. Yeah, it's weird. I thought I'd feel triumphant. But honestly, I just feel done. Done how? Like I don't need to carry it anymore. Their doubt, their disappointment, even their apology. She studied me. You think they got it? I shrugged. Doesn't matter if they did. The message wasn't for them anymore. A few days later, I got an email. Subject, we're proud of you. Even if we didn't show it then. No signature. Just that. I read it, archived it, and moved on. Because healing doesn't always need closure. Sometimes it just needs a boundary and a stage. And the next night, in a quiet hotel room in Tokyo, I wrote a new song. Not about them. Not about revenge. About peace. Because the truth is, when they called me a disgrace for following my dream, they thought they were protecting me. But all they really did was hand me the match. And I used it to light the path they never saw coming.